John Hardy Rose became one of the best friends I'd ever had in my life. He came to the road shortly after I did. We were both on the bunk beds on F block. I don't know what drew us to become as close as we were. We were both from rural areas of western North Carolina, but that's where the similarities ended. John had been a junkie, and, as I will come to understand, John Rose was a confessed serial killer that was under the radar. He told me stories that I eventually realized were not stories and were not made up. While we were on the bunk beds, we would stay up late into the night. One night in particular, we smoked a couple of joints. He spoke about the crime he was convicted of. Some of the particulars shall remain secret, but the upshot of it was that he didn't actually kill that girl. He disposed of her body with someone he was very close to. We were up all night. Both of us rather high. I spoke of my co-defendant, Jaynes Smith, and how he lied his way out of the capital murder charge. At 6 a.m., the lights came on. Count time. John looked at me in a strange way, as if waiting a decision, then decided. He said he'd made up that story. He killed her. I believed the first story. He didn't do it. In jail for this crime, after giving conflicting statements, the girl's body hadn't been found. No body, no charges. Sure, they had the right man. The cops played dirty pool. They had John's mama tell him to come clean. If you know where that girl's body is, son, tell him, she said. And he did, much as he later regretted it. The jury spoke, and here he is on death row. John was a truck driver, coast to coast. He told me of some of his crimes. He killed girls that had hitched a ride with him. He had his way with them, killed them, and disposed of their bodies in the desert. Women living the kind of life that brought them to truck stops would barely be missed. Runaways and addicts. They deserved to be able to have lived their lives as they saw fit. Instead, they caught a ride that would become fatal. At first, I was appalled as I listened to John tell these crimes. I couldn't hide my expression of distaste. I swore to keep his secrets, but it didn't matter. He told other guys some of the same stories. And the stories never wavered on details. I could only assume he was telling the truth. John didn't have much support while here. We kind of partnered up. As such, when I had money, I bought him stuff, coffee, tobacco, whatever he needed. Also bought other stuff to get high on. I wasn't only relying on family support. I played poker, sold sandwiches for the players, and a few other hustles I had going. I was moved off E block and housed on B block. He had housed gatekeepers, but now it was to be our third death row block. John was still on E block. Soon thereafter, his new friend, who has since passed away, asked John to watch his back as trouble was jumping off. True to his word, he held guys away from his friend's back. From then on, me and John drifted away. When I got moved back to E block, me and John just weren't as close. He had a new partner. I loved that man like a brother. I compartmentalized the stories of his other crimes. I separated that part of him from the guy I really liked. As much as I loved him, I never wanted him to get out of prison. He would continue his former activities. He said so. I didn't want to see him executed, but I didn't want him to ever be able to kill women again. I've often thought about the things he told me. How does a man do these things? Why does it desire? I have an opinion on this. He was raised by his mom, several sisters and no brothers, no dad. His mama divorced his dad early on. Something in him, in his mind, twisted. It was something to do with his mom and sisters. That's as close to a reason as I can come to. Sins and all, He was my friend and my brother. And now, 23 years after his execution, I still miss him. As I've said, when I arrived on the road in April 1992, I was initially housed on F Block. I came when there were only 2 blocks, E and F, 32 cells per block, each block having 16 cells to a side. All cells were occupied. David Jr. Brown, the guy that most recently received a cell, had to give his cell up, and him and I were placed on bunk beds in the day room. His cell was now used as a bathroom for the 2 of us. David Ward was called Yard Dog. I didn't ask what the significance of the name was. I was new and he had other things on his mind, and so did I. I got along well with David Ward, aka Yard Dog. He was quiet and minded his business. I watched him play Scrabble with a guy that eventually made it off the roof. I saw some strange movement from Yard Dog. He kept looking down at his lap. He had extra leather towels on his t-shirt under the table. Not saying anything, I looked at his opponent to see if he noticed it. Much to my surprise, he too had leather towels on his lap. Both were cheating, yet neither knew what the other was doing. So intent were they on their extra towels. And as I later found out, I was wrong. They were both totally aware of what the other was doing and were having a great time while doing it. Anyone that knew David Jr. Ward, as I said, Yard Dog, or the ones I spoke to, would tell you that they had no problem with him and got along with him just fine. I'd spent 3 years on lockup from late 1997 to 2000. Yard Dog was there for some of that time. Not sure what the circumstances were that had him there, so maybe at least one guy might have had an issue with him. Guess that goes to show you can't please everybody. I had few dealings with Yard Dog. While we weren't exactly friends, we weren't enemies either. Hopefully his death brought closure to someone. If not, his death was even more senseless. Ernest Stassen was odd. He was hired to kill a woman's husband. When arrested, he told on her and eventually testified against her. Knowing this, I never fully warmed to him. There's an old saying that still holds weight. Do the crime, do the time. Meaning don't tell on others involved that didn't get caught. There are many rules we prisoners go by, rules amongst ourselves. Keep your word. Do what you say you'll do. And above all, don't tell on anyone. To understand it, Ernest had a change of heart, or had it changed. He embraced Christianity. He felt God wanted him to testify as to all aspects of his crimes. Ernest was an avid NASCAR fan. I don't quite recall who the driver was. I think it might have been Dale Earnhardt, the Intimidator. Just this morning, I went to the kiosk in our day room, logged onto the law site, and pulled Ernest's case up. I suspect he had never been involved in things such as murder before. And if it wasn't for his nephew, he wouldn't have got involved in this one. Unbeknownst to Ernest, his nephew tried to enlist another guy to do the killing. And what's more, the nephew and the nephew's friend were both active police informants. So, the guy told the cops he knew about the murder, telling on the nephew. Nephew and the woman that just had to get rid of her husband, both are arrested. Nephew told all, then got in touch with Ernest and said he should come on down. And he did, making a full voluntary confession. For a measly $200, a man lost his wife. Ernest was in bad financial straits, so $200 was badly needed. He earned that money and paid far more than anyone other than the husband. While in jail, Ernest made the transformation I spoke about. When in jail, some people get what's known as a jailhouse religion. It lasts till they get out of jail. Ernest was the real deal. Volunteers that brought Jesus to the prisoners agreed. The jailers also agreed. The wife, she was worse than we knew. Seemed she took a plastic bag and suffocated her stepson years before. That's what Ernest went back to court to do, testify against the wife. I won't hold the hurting kids, much less killing them. Neither do I hold with testifying against someone. I understand Ernest wanted to do the right thing to come clean. Still, I had that against him. It may have been petty of me, but there it is. I never said anything to Ernest about my feelings. We had a distant but cordial relationship. What I'm about to say may seem bizarre, but bear with me. In my opinion, based on the evidence presented, Ernest was just as much a victim as the husband was. Under different circumstances, Ernest would never have been involved, but times would lean. He didn't decide one morning that he was going to kill a man. The nephew came to him, but it's the wife that brought all of them together. Were it not for her callous attitude, her monstrous desire to have her husband killed, Ernest would still be alive. And the wife, the one that set things in motion, a life sentence, no death penalty. Now, I'm not pro-death penalty, but in a more just world, it would be her on the gurney and Ernest in another prison, but feeling freer than he ever had before. The Spirit indwelled Ernest. When he stands before God, his slate shall be clean. End.